Hey guys, how's it going? I am attorney Michael Eline. I am a lawyer licensed in California and Texas, and I am here today, and I'm not ignoring you. I'm just looking at my screen. This is the first time I've ever done a show from my car where I'm using Restream, and I'm having some difficulty with the screen sharing feature on Restream. So just bear with me. That's why I came on a little bit late. But I was going to talk to you today a little bit about what's going on with Chairman Powell and his war against crypto and Donald Trump, because I think it's telling what's going on here. And I wanted to share some videos with you. Unfortunately, I'm having some issues doing that using Restream today. So hopefully we'll be able to get into this for you. Just bear with me. I'm going to try one more time to see if there's a way to do it. So far, I'm not having any luck, but I might get lucky here while we're waiting for people to join the show. So, first of all, yeah, again, I'm licensed to practice law in California and Texas. And part of my practice lately is I've been getting into cryptocurrency law, gold and silver, and learning more about the historical foundations of our country to try and help you people understand what's really going on with the. Stand by 1 second here. Yep, hold on. Let me get it. There we go. So hopefully I've got better sound now. Hey, what's going on? What's the matter, you? Do I have pretty good comms? I picked up a microphone today so I could shoot from my car, and I was really hoping to share some of these videos with you, but I think I may have found a way to do it. It's a little bit awkward, but I think we can figure it out. I'll just take the camera and flip it around so I can let you guys watch the videos with me. But I was just checking really quick here to see if there was a way I could do this. So just work with me, guys, while we get this, before we get the show started, because I think it would be better if we could do it this way, where we could actually show you what's going on. So I've activated screen sharing. Stand by 1 second. And again, this is the first time I've done this, so just bear with me, all right? Because I definitely would like to do it this way. Let me try one more time, and then if I can't do it, then we'll figure it out. We'll do it this other way. All right. So it doesn't look like it's going to let me. So hey, good seeing you, Lenny. So yeah, I'm just kicking it in the car today. I've got my son in judo, and I figured, you know what? It's been so hard to go live these last couple of days. As you guys know, I practice law, and I've been working on a bunch of briefs for some cases that I'm working on. But I wanted to talk to you all about what's going on with the economy. And since I can't share the screen with you, the videos that I want to share with you, what I'll do is we're going to do it in a little bit kind of a weird way. You said the sound is cruddy? Oh, that's not good. Hold on, man. Let me check again really quick, make sure I got sound. So is that better? So I bought this new microphone, so I know it's not going to be as good as my Shuri, but it's hooked up to where hopefully you guys. Well, hold on. Let's get back. So I've got that hooked up. I've got the camera set up on the Stream Pro. So it should be. Can you guys hear me okay? Do I have decent sound, guys? Okay, hey, Let's OT though. Good seeing you, man. All right. So first thing I wanted to get into is we've got this big time war with the far radical Marxist left, who we know run the Federal Reserve banking system. We know that historically the banks have been the enemy of the American people. We know that. And so my contention is that this really started with Thomas Jefferson and then Andrew Jackson. All right. So hopefully we got some still cruddy sound, huh? 2x4. Letso TVO says, move the microphone a little bit away from me. Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. Is that a little better, guys? If I hold it away from me? So it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do any screen sharing with you. Too close to the mic. So I just pulled it away. Here, I'm going to set it up over here on the actual computer. Maybe that'll... How's that? Is that a little better? Again, this is my first time, so thanks for working with me, guys, on the show, because this is the first time I've done this in my car. Normally, I do this from a studio where I've got a Shure microphone and a much better camera. But today, I took my son to judo, and I'm waiting in the car. There might be a little bit of background noise. Yeah, you're welcome, Miss Constitutional Rights. Okay, cool. Right on, Mama Lion. All right, cool. Man, I'm just bummed out because I was really hoping that I could do some screen sharing with you where I could show you these videos, which really sucks. But what I can do is I can take the camera and point it. That's what I'm going to try to do. That works. And it's not going to be the best way. It's not going to be the way I normally would do it. Oh, what's that over there? Oh, what is that? Oh, what's that? Oh. So here. So you can see what I'm seeing, all right? Hopefully this will do it. Maybe this, I don't know, this may work, it may not work. Let's see what we got. It may just be too crummy to work properly, but let's take a look. The problem is I can't see what you're seeing. So I'm just going to play this first video for you, and hopefully you can hear it, and then you guys can chew me out later if it didn't work out. Why? Amen. So I don't know. Hopefully you guys saw that. So tell me if that worked out okay. I know it's not the best, but it's the best that I can do for my card today. Until I think it wants me to use Google Chrome to use screen sharing. But yeah, so that's basically what's going on. Somebody said it just right. Let me see here. Lenny Malley said it right. Yeah, the Federal Reserve Bank was created, I believe, in 1913. I think it was Woodrow Wilson who sold us out to the bankers, and in violation of our Constitution, created a central bank that has basically strangled the United States, the people of the United States, in favor of foreign bankers. And the Federal Reserve banking system is what they call it, a quasi government agency, but it's really just a conglomeration of private banks who operate under a charter. And Chairman Powell is one of the very few people that the president actually can't fire, which is really absurd. And they also have secret meetings where they have these 9 guys who go in there secretly and decide whether or not they can raise interest rates, what the value of the currency is going to be. And it's everything that our founding fathers, except for maybe Alexander Hamilton, wanted for this country. And you couldn't hear any of the video. Freaking horrible. All right. You could not hear his words. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to, since you couldn't hear it, I am going to just put this bad chicken. I'm going to put this bad chicken in a position where I'm going to read it to you. All right. So, hopefully it'll show up on my screen. That one's not. Okay. Well, here, hold on a minute. Since you can't hear it. All right, here we go. Why is it that they try to smear the legacy of every leader who dares to take on the banks? Take Andrew Jackson, for example. He openly declared the banks were trying to kill him, and they tried to kill him. They shot him. But old Hickory said, screw it. He canceled the charter of the Bank of the United States, and he declared that new land could only be bought in silver and gold. And he did it without a federal income tax, only tariffs. And that's what I've been trying to tell you guys, is that America never had an income tax system. And that's when we were in our most prosperous phase ever, is when we didn't have an income tax. The income tax system is a Marxist system that basically punishes people for success. Okay. So let me keep on explaining to you what's going on here. So he did all this without a federal income tax. He canceled our national debt. Debt slavery is what we're experiencing now. So let's keep going. He's the only president in U.S. history to have canceled our debt. All the schools teach about is the Trail of Tears and how terrible that he was, but they prop up people like Hamilton, who was a Federalist. So anti-Federalists like me, Jackson, as well as Jefferson, are people who believe that our currency should be gold and silver backed like our Constitution says. And if you look into his history, you'll see that he achieved his goal of entirely paying off the U.S. national debt. It was the only time in U.S. history that national debt stood at zero. Zero. All right. But all they talk about is how there was a depression for 4 years because of him abolishing the central banks. And we know that the Bank of England, in the War of 1812, one of their main goals was to recreate a central national bank. So all they do is paint Jackson as a terrible guy, and they talk about this horrible financial crisis. But what it enabled people like you and I to do was to be able to buy homes for cheap and to start our venture west. And it was just a 4-year crisis, and we've seen that the Federal Reserve Bank engineers crises all the time. By 1841, land prices had collapsed and were dirt cheap. Land in places like Chicago fell 88% in real inflation adjusted value from 1836 to 1841. And that's pretty huge. Just imagine if you could get housing for 88% less today. Speculators and banks were wiped out, but average people, especially new settlers and Western farmers, this was an opportunity to buy land at affordable prices. The people in 1840s could buy land far more cheap during the bubble years under Jackson. Jackson hated concentrated financial power, especially in the hands of a central bank. His goal was to decentralize money, reduce corruption, and return power back to the common man. And so we could access land and opportunity. The crash wiped out speculators and Eastern elites, but it cleared the way for ordinary people to settle west and purchase land cheap. So just bear with me because I'm reading here. In the long run, his policies help fulfill the vision of empowering ordinary Americans. It was a short-term pain, but long-term populist gain, especially for those who had cash or stayed out of debt. And this is what we mean by abolishing the Fed. This is why we want to abolish the Fed. This is why Donald Trump is trying to devalue our currency. So let me explain to you how this works, guys. The Federal Reserve sets interest rates, but they're a highly political organization, and they support the Democrat Party, and they have for a long time. And here's one of the examples that I'll give you right now. Um, First of all, there's undercover footage from James O'Keefe, which I can't show you, unfortunately, because I can't do screen sharing. But a Federal Reserve economist named Orel Hismo described Jerome Powell while being secretly filmed undercover as somebody who holds interests and held the line against Trump and refused to help improve the economy under his administration. The undercover agent asked, does Jerome Powell hate Trump? Gizmo said, yes, of course. He wanted to stimulate the economy, but he, Powell, wouldn't do it. He started raising rates to do the opposite of what Trump wanted. We don't want Trump to be in government. We don't want Trump to be successful. So, regardless of whether or not you like Donald Trump, he is trying to weaken our currency and he is trying to abolish the Federal Reserve banking system, but it's a private banking system. And it is run by a cartel of people who hate us, who hate traditional Americans, in my opinion. And they still have their DEI policies there where they promote people not based on their qualifications, but based on their skin color or their gender. They still support all the weird rainbow flag mafia policies that the Democrats forced onto us starting under Obama. And that's another example of how they're still private because they just simply ignore federal law because they're a private bank, they're a cartel. So why would they? And they're also in violation of the Sunshine Act. They have secret meetings. Well, how is it that they're able to violate the Sunshine Act if they're not a private banking cartel? You answer me that question. All right. So now I know a lot of people don't like Donald Trump in here, and I'm not doing this to try and be a Trump, rah-rah, MAGA guy or anything like that. I'm just stating facts, okay? So here's another example. Donald Trump just fired the U.S. jobs report chief after weak July numbers and massive revisions. 258,000 jobs were quietly revised down before the election to help Kamala Harris get elected. Trump accuses the Fed of playing games and says Powell should be put out to pasture. So here's a quote from Donald Trump on Truth Social. I was just informed that our country's job numbers are being produced by a Biden appointee, Dr. Erica Muckentarfer, the Commissioner of Labor Statistics, who faked the jobs numbers before the election to try and boost Kamala's chances of victory. This is the same Bureau of Labor Statistics that overstated jobs growth in March of 2024 by approximately 818,000 jobs, and then again right before the 2024 presidential election in August and September of 12,000. These were records. No one can be that wrong. We need accurate jobs numbers. I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate. They can't be manipulated for political purposes. Muckentarter said there were only 73,000 jobs added. A shock! But more importantly, that a major mistake was made by them. 258,000 jobs downward in the prior 2 months. Similar things happened in the first part of the year, always to the negative. The economy is booming under Trump, and that's true compared to Biden. I mean, inflation is much further down, but all you hear CNN and ABC and PMSNBC talk about is how terrible inflation is. But it was like way worse under Biden. Gas prices are down, egg prices are down, nothing like it was under Sleepy Joe. Now, similar things happened again in the first part. Hold on a minute. So what this is all about is it's a battle over interest rates, where the Fed lowered interest rates twice under Biden when inflation was much, much, much higher, like outrageously higher. I'm going to just really quickly tell you. So Powell has basically used this Biden appointee. Well, actually, Biden's inflation increased to 9.1%, okay? Under Trump, inflation is 2.7%. Jerome Powell had no problem lowering interest rates to help swing an election. On September 18th of 2024, he cut them by 0.50 percentage points to 4.75% to 5%. November 7th of 2024, he cut them by another 0.25 percentage points to 4.50 slash 4.75%. And it's obvious that he did this to influence the election. Now, Trump haters will say, well, Trump appointed Powell. That's right. In the first term, Trump appointed a lot of people who were part of the deep state because he was told by other people who had been involved in politics, who he relied upon uh, to appoint certain people. And then he found out later that these people were working against him, and they were working with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to spread the bullshit Russia, Russia, Russia narrative. We now know that Obama, Hillary, heads of the CIA and FBI are now under investigation for trying to rig that election and working with social media to shut people's social media accounts down who talked about the Hunter Biden laptop in the Hillary Clinton fake Russiagate scandal, which is a total lie, which was used to get secret FISA warrants against President Trump and people in his administration. And this all goes back to the Federal Reserve banking system. That's what this is all about. Hey, what's going on, Howard Clay? Good seeing you. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Hold on a minute. Let's scroll down a little bit more. So let me tell you what this is all about, okay? So the fake job numbers. Powell's goal is to keep interest rates as high as possible so there's less liquidity in the market. Powell doesn't like the idea of tariffs because tariffs devalue the US currency. Our trading partners have been manipulating their currency to deflate them to make the US dollar stronger to increase their buying power because the dollar is the international currency. And that is one of the reasons why we have a trade deficit with China and our other trading partners. So whenever Trump raises the tariffs, Powell says, well, we want to lower interest rates because you're causing inflation. But what it's really about is he's weakening the Federal Reserve's prestige and power. What Trump's trying to do is break the Fed's back. And unfortunately, we have short-term economic problems when he uses these tariffs to try and do that. Every time Powell refuses to lower interest rates, Trump immediately attacks with more tariffs. Now, why is the jobs report lie so important? This Obama appointee who reported these high jobs numbers created an artificial appearance that the American dollar was strong. When we have a strong dollar, the Federal Reserve has no reason to raise interest rates. Yet they still did it under Biden when inflation was 9% and it's 2.5%. And they did it twice under Biden, but it's 2.5% under Trump. Now, as a lawyer, I can tell you very clearly that reasonable inferences can be drawn from the circumstantial and direct evidence that this is being done to try and damage President Trump's third presidency, his third lawful election. And because of that, it's been very difficult for him to put forth his economic policies. The Federal Reserve Bank knows that the writing is on the wall. Most of the American people know about Jekyll Island now. If they didn't go to a public school and they're not brainwashed by some Marxist teacher or college professor and they don't believe in Keynesian economics, they understand what's really going on. Fiat currency is worthless. It's only based on its perceived value. Now that brings us to crypto. Now, I know What's the Matter You has a different point of view on cryptocurrency, and I'm starting to become more aligned with What's the Matter You's view on it, but for a different reason. So, cryptocurrency was originally established as a way for you to privately conduct your financial business. I personally believe that the government has no business knowing what kind of financial transactions that you're engaged in. It's a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights, but you've been brainwashed by the public school system and in the economist-based, Marxist-run college system to believe that somehow the government should have a right to know what you earn. Cryptocurrency gave us the ability to circumvent that and start going back to a system similar to gold and silver, where you could trade in gold and silver and there wouldn't be any record of it because the government has no business knowing what you earn, period. And the anti-federalists like me believe that. The federalists, on the other hand, who control all of our government agencies, as well as the public school system, which is now getting its curriculum in partnership from the World Economic Forum, you can look it up yourself if you don't believe me, is doing everything they can to get their bodies and their minds on your children's brains. And so that's what's been going on. So cryptocurrency now, unfortunately, and this is where I align with What's the Matter You, because of all these different government regulations that were just enacted, it makes cryptocurrency basically do the exact opposite of what it was intended to do. Now it's going to be monitored and it's going to be taxed to high hell. And the Fed Reserve, once again, is getting their hands on your crypto, just like they want to get their hands on your gold. Remember, Roosevelt made it illegal to own gold. Remember that? And that's what these central controlists, these globalists want. They don't want you to have economic independence from the government. Remember, socialism is when the government controls the means of production. And that's who most government employees are. I've never met anyone who worked for the IRS who wasn't a far left Marxist, anti American communist. Have you? And remember, the IRS is the collection agency for the Federal Reserve private banking cartel. So they all work together, they're all buddies. And Barack Hussein Obama has been orchestrating most of this directly from his mansion the whole time that Joe Biden was allegedly president, when the guy didn't even know his own name. All right. And of course, we know that PMSNBC, CNN, ABC, pretty much every news agency is far left Democrat. Even Fox News is run by what I consider to be controlled opposition. All right, I don't believe that Fox News is any better than any of these guys, and that's why I constantly tell you guys you need to form parallel systems. You need to start doing business directly with each other. You need to be homesteading and homeschooling your children. Get your kids out of the public school propaganda system. The rainbow flag mafia only has as much power as you give them over your children. As Malcolm X said, why would you let your enemy raise your kids? And effectively, that's what you're doing if you have traditional family values by sending your kid to a school where these teachers have been brainwashed by the radical Marxist National Education Association. And they take that same philosophy, that DEI, all white people are evil, we need to teach critical race theory into the school system. So that's right. Lenny Malley, I think you said it best. That's right, Lenny. Um, Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get this looking. That looks way cooler, right? Give me a bunch of ones if you like the way the letters look better on the screen now. So let me just take a look here. What's the matter? You says I've never met anyone who works for the IRS. Well, that tells me at least you haven't been audited yet, because typically that's when you're going to meet them. um, Now, let me see here. Eyes on the News says make sure you can buy your young kids, those little army men, to become foot soldiers for the politicians. Yeah, I don't believe in that either. And look, I was a Marine, and I was all about, serving my country. And then as I got older and I understood what was really going on, I realized that I love the Marine Corps. I love that training, but being a foot soldier for politicians is not something that I want for my son. I learned later on when I got older that the Gulf of Tonkin was a lie. It never happened. And that was used by politicians to get us into that war. The military industrial complex is definitely the enemy of the American people. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. But I don't want to get too far off topic. I on your news. Um, Let me see here. Now, let me see. What's the matter? You says, I am not sure what differences I think we have on crypto. I'm stronger on 4A than even you are. Yeah, well, okay, so a lot of people, and I could be wrong about your beliefs, what's the matter you on crypto, but a lot of people think it's just worthless, and that it's basically only valuable for its perceived value. And I agree to a degree. The difference between crypto and the US dollar is the private markets get to decide its value. At least they did before we had all these new crypto laws. Okay. So you would decide how much it's worth based on you trading back and forth in crypto, buying and selling. You would decide how much your Satoshis were worth. Now, unfortunately, the government's getting their hands on crypto. And anytime you let a bunch of politicians get their hands on anything, they slowly destroy it. So that is the problem. But yeah, One Love, I'm sorry to hear that they audited you. That's awful. And the problem is, when you talk to these leftists who have government jobs, they never get edited because they work for the government, right? So they protect their own. But when you talk to them, you say, "Oh, well, you have a small business, therefore you must be wealthy, and if you have nothing to hide, you should have nothing to fear." A la Joseph Goebbels from the Nazis, right? Nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide. That's how these Marxists in government think. They really believe that shit. The problem is, to fight an audit, you might spend hundreds of thousands of dollars that you don't have. And so just like what happened to Lane Myers, they basically put you in a position where you're forced to enter into a deal with them and pay whatever they want because you're going to end up paying it to a lawyer anyways. And so that's why a lot of people want to abolish the IRS as well as the Federal Reserve banking system. It's the only people who want to keep these systems in place are the people who benefit from it, and that is government employees. And that's why I am a recovering Democrat, because I realize that growing the government puts us into further debt, and it creates a caste system where you have the government and their employees, and then you have we the people. Well, that's not how America should be. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that we should all be in the same ship going the same direction together. When the government gets carve outs and exceptions and we the people don't, it puts them into a position just like they had in the Soviet Union, where you had the proletariat, the wealthy government employees, by at least by their standards wealthy, and then the peasants. A two-party system, basically, the proletariats against the people. And that's what the Marxist left wants for this country. And I'm not saying that the Republicans are much better, but I am saying that at least they're doing it at a much slower pace. But I'm a libertarian after all, so I'm not supporting any of that. I'm an anti-federalist like Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, and Andrew Jackson, okay? So now, E.N. Copedog says, I registered as a Democrat when Manchin okayed the Inflation Reduction Act. The deep state is real and nothing happens by chance or in coincidence in D.C. Oh, that's very true. And look, I feel for you that you're still registered as a Democrat. I hope that you left the Communist Marxist Democrat Party when they started trying to push the transgender ideology on my school children. That's when I knew I had to get involved in homeschooling and start doing things to reclaim the minds of our children, because I realized that public schools are nothing more than a far left, anti-American Marxist re-education camp. Give me a bunch of ones if you guys agree, and that the only way we're going to be able to take back our country is starting with the minds of our children. If your little boy has been brainwashed into thinking he's a girl and he's getting sterilized, it's over. It's too late already for you. And the same goes for your daughter. She's being injected with testosterone and being sterilized. It's over for her. It's over for the country. And so they start by brainwashing our kids. And that's why we need to teach normal American history. We need to teach about anti-federalism. We need to teach about the disaster of the Federal Reserve banking system. And we need to abolish the Federal Reserve and return us back to a intrinsic monetary-based currency system. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Hey, Jody, good seeing you. So absolutely, the Federal Reserve banking system is the single biggest fraud ever perpetrated on the American people. And the college system, which is government-based, right? It's all government propaganda and government curriculum, as well as the public schools. They teach Keynesian economics. It's just all bullshit. Fiat currency is not money. They are notes of debt. So back to cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency offered us a way out. It offered us a way to do instantaneous transactions without having to go through a Federal Reserve-based system. But now what we're dealing with is Obama and Biden holdovers in the Trump administration. So by artificially inflating the jobs numbers, this appointee, this Biden appointee, that unfortunately Trump kept in power, artificially inflated jobs numbers, which gave Powell an excuse not to lower interest rates. By lowering interest rates, we would have had liquidity in our markets. The economy would be at an all-time high. President Trump has brought in trillions of dollars from at least high billions, okay? I don't want to overinflate things like the left does, but at least billions and billions and billions of dollars from these tariffs. Now, people who support the left will say, well, that's increasing inflation. Well, actually, an economic boom will decrease inflation, right? And abolishing the Federal Reserve banking system will decrease inflation, because free markets should be deciding what the inflation rate is, not 9 bureaucrats at the Federal Reserve banking system who put the interests of banks and their shareholders above the American people. And that's the problem that we need to focus on right now, guys, is the Federal Reserve banking system along with their banking cartel and the far left Marxist run news media has brainwashed generations of American people into thinking that these unelected bureaucrats over at the Federal Reserve Bank, they're doing what's right for the American people. But if that was the case, they would have lowered interest rates. Remember, interest rates under Biden were at 9% or higher. They're at 2.5% to 4% up and down. Inflation under Trump is much lower than it was under Biden. But the Federal Reserve Bank under Powell reduced interest rates twice to try to make it look like the economy was doing better. Why is that? Because when you lower interest rates, money gets flooded into the market. People can buy things, people can invest in things, and people can invest in cryptocurrency. So a couple of days ago, cryptocurrency, uh, Bitcoin was about $119,000 per coin. After Powell announced his decision not to reduce interest rates, now it's at 12,543 up and down what I'm looking at. 112,543. So by Powell not reducing interest rates, he's tanked the entire economy. Now people are blaming Trump, saying, well, Trump has these tariffs. Well, what Trump's trying to do is get rid of the trade imbalance. And since since Powell didn't lower interest rates, Trump had no choice but to go back after tariffs to reduce the value of the American dollar. Because what that does is it forces our trading powers, our trading partners, to increase the value of their currency. And they've been artificially decreasing the value of their currency. So, in other words, in spite of what the Federal Reserve banking system is doing to hurt our economy, Trump is trying to increase our economic um, receipts, and he has done that. And here's the thing. Remember, before we had a private Federal Reserve banking system, we had a debt-free currency system under Andrew Jackson, debt-free. We abolished these private Federal Reserve banking central banking systems. Americans didn't have a federal income tax, yet we had unprecedented economic prosperity. Tariffs, without an income tax, would bring us back into a golden age of prosperity, just like our founding fathers envisioned for this country. And so that's what's been going on, guys. So it's easy to try and blame Trump for all this, but in essence, it really started with Jekyll Island in 1913 and Woodrow Wilson, that traitorous president, selling our country out to private banking cartels. And so cryptocurrency is their biggest enemy. The Federal Reserve Bank wants you dependent on a fiat currency system, money that's backed by nothing but a promise that they get to control. And they print money out of nothing. They borrow money from themselves that's worthless and then lend it to banks, and then banks charge us interest on that. So that's really what's been going on, guys, in a nutshell. So let me see here. So now what's the matter? You says, Michael, come on. These things you're choosing to believe are insane. Nothing Donald Trump is for the American people or the nation. Well, I mean, maybe he is doing this for selfish reasons. What's the matter, you? Maybe Trump is doing this for selfish reasons. But guess what? The same thing that he's doing aligns with the interests of patriotic Americans when it comes to abolishing the Federal Reserve banking system and getting us back onto an intrinsic valued monetary system. So I'm not sitting here propping up Trump or trying to make him look good. They may be for selfish reasons, but as Adam Smith said in Wealth of Nations, it's self-interest that motivates people, all people, including the Marxist left. That's why they don't want to use their own money to pay for illegal aliens. They want to use your money. That's why they don't want to house illegal aliens and sub-Saharan Africans in their homes. They want you to put them in your neighborhood. Okay? So self-interest motivates everyone in this world. The issue is your self-interest also going to promote the betterment of this country? And in my humble opinion, based upon history, a debt-free currency, the abolition of private central banks, and a return to intrinsic valued money is the best thing we could ever do for this country. Abolishing the income tax and returning to a tariff-based system would absolutely create the biggest economic boom unprecedented in the history of this country. Allowing political appointees, usually far left people, because they're the ones who get jobs working for the government, right? Let's think about it. Aside from the military, government employees are parasites of the taxpayer, all right? Parasitic to the taxpayer. And they are going to vote for the political party that increases their salaries and gives them more money out of your paycheck. And that's precisely what's happened. CIA, FBI, IRS, public school teachers unions all make their money off of you, the taxpayer. And who tries to eliminate power? Libertarians and Republicans. So, of course, they're going to vote for Marxist Democrats. And that's the problem because they get to control policy no matter who's president. The private banking cartels basically control all the monetary policy. So, that's the big issue that we have. So, let me take a look at some of the questions here. Um, and I know, so let me see here. What's the matter? You says the Fed bailed out Trump for almost 600 million. That may be true, but right now the Fed is working actively against his presidency. So, and it's obvious what they're doing. They're trying to keep the interest rates high. They're using their friends who are inside the Trump administration to try and say that the dollar is strong. I think we all know the dollar is not strong. Trying to say the jobs numbers are strong and high, and they're not, right? They're not high. Um, and so because of that, interest rates should have been lowered at least twice during Trump's presidency. And if that was the case, Bitcoin would be at about $500,000 a coin right now, guaranteed, guaranteed. So let's see here. Parasitic, yeah, that's right. Froggy Games. I agree. Parasitic is exactly what it is. And now, Lenny, I agree with you about Hillary. I mean, she sold our uranium to the Russians. She obviously made up the Russiagate story to try and keep Trump from becoming president, but that was all orchestrated by Barry Soetoro, aka Barack Hussein Obama. Okay, most people realize who actually have done a little bit of research know that he's a typical Harvard academic, anti-American Marxist, and so you get what you pay for, right? He was able to use race and race baiting in order to basically accuse anyone who disagreed with his Marxist policies of being racist. And of course, the R word is the biggest, most terrifying thing to a white person to be called. So, because of that, people kept quiet while their country was destroyed by Barry Soetoro. So, now I do believe that Donald Trump wants to destroy the Fed. And I think that he took advantage, like any politician would, of getting a bailout from wherever he could because he's forced to work within the economic system, or he was forced to work within the economic system that was in place at the time. But it's obvious that Trump is trying to weaken the US dollar and replace America with a tariff based economy like we had prior to the secret private Federal Reserve banking cartel. And I think that that's a great idea. And I think if you do some research about Andrew Jackson, if you learn a little bit about the differences between Hamilton and Jackson, and you learn about Thomas Jefferson, the Anti Federalists, and you read a little bit about The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, then I think you'll agree with me. So I think that everybody, including Trump and Pocahontas, they've all benefited from this, what I believe to be an unlawful, unconstitutional private banking cartel. But we, the people, now are in a stronger position than we've ever been in our lifetimes to change the system. So, by getting rid of this woman, this Biden appointee who put out false job numbers to prevent Powell from reducing the interest rates, we're looking pretty good for an interest rate reduction. However, because the tariffs will increase inflation over the short term, the Fed will probably use that as another excuse to not lower interest rates. So it's almost like they're sort of in a battle that neither side is going to win. And so all the Fed has to do is wait for Trump, for someone to take a hit on him, or for him to leave office, get another Democrat in there, and cryptocurrency will probably go down to like $20,000 a coin, and people will be forced back into bonds. People will be forced back into the Federal Reserve System. And I believe that that is the end game for the Federal Reserve banking cartel. They do not want you to have alternative forms of currency. They want you to be dependent on fiat currency. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So let's see here. I'm just going to look to see if there's any. I know I'm groggy myself after Biden. That's right. Yeah, XRP is now 280. That's right, One Love. Can you believe that? That's crazy. I mean, it was really jamming. So let me take a look over at my ticker. So now Bitcoin is climbing back up to 112,847. So you just see it going up and down. Here, I'm going to show you my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Take a look at that. So I've been watching Bitcoin do this all morning, buying at the dip, buying at the dip, buying at the dip. Every time this line goes down, I'm buying at the dip. Because I do believe that Bitcoin will continue to go up in value if Trump's policies are fully implemented. And I have faith that most of the American people can see through the scam of the private banking cartel, and that they're going to have to give an inch or the American people are going to take a mile. And that's my personal belief. So my favorite Dragon Ball character is Cell Jr. because he's blue and cute. Desmond, I don't play that game, but I'll have to check it out. I'll ask my son. I know he does stuff like that. Let me see here. Yeah, so Rando says Joe Biden isn't president. Trump funds wars and remove money from emergency health services. Oh boy, go back to your Harvard campus. This is where grown-ups go. Okay, this is the channel for grown-ups, not for children who are brainwashed in the Marxist-run education system. Uh, Obama and Biden's government employees that he left behind have been artificially rigging our financial system. And one was just caught lying about our jobs numbers, saying that they were better than they were. So that would prevent Jerome Powell from reducing interest rates. And we know that Jerome Powell is all in for the left. Inflation was at 9% under Sleepy Joe, and Powell reduced the rates twice. Inflation is around 2.5% under Trump, and Powell is refusing to lower the interest rates. That's all you need to know. It's called common sense. These people are all in for the radical left. For you to make idiotic, childish statements like that tells me that you're a partisan Democrat instead of somebody who has the best interests of your country in mind. So that's right, One Love. These are facts. Yeah, I think that it probably will get back up to 150 in the short term. The issue is, are you going to sell? I don't know, man. I mean, with Bitcoin, it goes up and down all the time. But if we had a strong tariff-based economy, Bitcoin would be $600,000 a coin right now. But when you allow these far left board of governors at the Federal Reserve to dictate your monetary policy, and you allow these leftists over at the IRS to basically hold you hostage in violation of the Fourth Amendment, it really restricts the American economy. And look, I'm not happy about the Fort Knox not being audited. That's a problem. I've got a real problem with that with Donald Trump. But I think most people need to understand that under Reagan there was an audit, and basically we learned that the private Federal Reserve banking cartel owns about 90% of that gold. It was basically handed to them, I believe, either by Woodrow Wilson or Roosevelt. And so we don't own that gold anyways, guys. A bunch of private bankers do. So if you support the private Federal Reserve banking system, you probably need to go to another channel, because that is not what our founding fathers ever intended for this country. We're supposed to be a free market, laissez-faire capitalist system. Well, the capitalist system we have in place now is crony capitalism, where private bankers and their friends like Pocahontas and Hillary Clinton go into office worth maybe $100,000 and come out worth two, three, $400 million. All you Democrats should be just as upset with your own party as you are with Donald Trump, who was already a billionaire when he went into office. So the hypocrisy is absolutely ridiculous. So let me see here. Love a good hack. Um, Rondo, if people want help doing things, That's why we have charities, and that's why we have the church. Allowing the government to pick and choose who the winners are is the worst mistake you could ever make. Case in point, during the floods, I believe it was in Florida, it could have been, well, it was one of the states near Florida at least. FEMA, which is far left Democrat run, was given a memo to not help or offer aid to anybody with a Trump for president sign in their front yard. That is not the kind of government that we want. In this country, we have something called the First Amendment, and we have free thought. If you want to support Donald Trump or you want to support a Marxist commie like Obama, and I'm in a position to help you, I'm not going to restrict your aid because we have political differences. That's something Marxists do. That's not something a libertarian like myself does. But giving people free money invites more free money and creates a precedent. When I was growing up, and when my family, my father was growing up, people receiving government handouts were looked down upon if they stayed on those handouts for more than a couple of months. Now it's looked at as a way of life. So your idea of help is different from mine. My idea of help is to give someone a hand up, not a handout. The Democrat idea of giving help is to make some permanent welfare recipient who votes for welfare checks for the rest of their life, aka the Democrat Party. And that's what we need to get away from. We need to start teaching people how to start their own businesses, how to become economically independent, and how to become free thinkers. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. The markets are super volatile right now, Lenny. It's a real problem. And oh, absolutely. People are losing their homes because of the Federal Reserve banking system meddling with our economy. If interest rates were down, housing prices would be down. So what did Biden do? He flooded the country with illegal immigrants and filled up all the rental units and hotels using your tax dollars to artificially inflate the markets to make his presidency look good. And now that those illegals are not receiving free shit from the government anymore, the housing market is starting to collapse. Why? Because it was artificially inflated. The average median price for a home should be hundreds of thousands of dollars in this country. The average price of a home should be affordable, and there shouldn't be interest at all. You shouldn't have to pay interest. You should be able to get a house for cheap enough to where you can get a loan. If you really believe all the political nonsense that you're espousing, then you should join me in moving for an abolition of interest rates altogether. Our government should never loan taxpayers money at interest, especially when they can print it for free. Give me a bunch of ones if you free thinkers who aren't brainwashed agree with me. So, yeah, the farms have less workers now. That's not true, Rondo. And uh, what was it, Chavez? Chavez, this icon of the left, he supported kicking out illegals in favor of American Mexican born farm workers. That you guys need to learn your history, all right? Illegal aliens are not the solution. They artificially lower wages and they prevent regular Americans from being able to get jobs at higher wages. So everything that you're saying is just complete propaganda from the left. It's not reality. So and American workers will definitely fill all jobs that illegals fill. Of course they will. Look, I worked construction. I dropped out of school when I was 16 for fighting. And I got a job working full time in construction, making $6 an hour. And I still ended up getting my diploma by going to school at night and joining the Marine Corps. So all you excuse maker commie libs, you guys are just living in a dream world, a fantasy. And the way that you talk about Latinos, and I'm in an interracial marriage with a Latina, you guys make me sick. Who's gonna pick our oranges? Who's gonna do our farm work? You guys can go F yourselves, all right? These people are normal people, just like me, just like most of my audience. Just because they're Latinos doesn't make them your slave that works for slave wages. All right? You guys are disgusting the way you talk about blacks and Latinos, saying that black people aren't smart enough to get an ID, so you can keep fraudulently winning elections with non-voter ID so people don't have to prove they're citizens. Ridiculous. Absolutely insane. Um, yeah, Mama Lion, I try. to remember to be kind because a lot of people have been manipulated. I try to. I do, Mama Lion, but it's hard when you deal with these college educated brainwashed people because they don't know what they're talking about. They're just totally brainwashed by the Marxist run education system to hate their country, to hate white people, all that stuff. Now, what's the matter, you says, and what did Trump do? Doubled the police state incarceration nation. Your hatred for the Democrats blinds you to many truths. No, I really don't hate Democrats. And I think that the police state grew much more under the Democrats, to be honest. I mean, the illegal surveillance started by Obama. Like, even if you bought a Bible or you went to Bass Sporting Goods, you'd automatically put on a list, or if you're a military veteran, automatically put on a list of potential domestic violent extremists. If parents protested the transgender ideology programs that Biden forced on the public school system, automatically they were put on a list of as potential domestic violent extremist parents, and they were followed and bugged and chased around and surveilled by the FBI and the CIA. I mean, it's terrible what the Democrats have done with the surveillance state. They would literally contact their friends at Twitter or Facebook or social media to have your social media accounts taken down if you said anything bad about Democrats. I don't know if you guys remember how bad it was with Twitter, but if you said anything bad about Obama or Biden, you could have 1 million followers on Twitter and your entire account would have been scrubbed. It was ridiculous, just like they're still doing in the United Kingdom and Canada. I mean, that's all the Democrats want to do is make us just like the United Kingdom and Canada. But I do agree with what's the matter you that both systems are moving more towards a police state. And so that's why I'm a libertarian. And that's why I believe that we need to form parallel systems so that we can take back this country from the globalists and the big government guys, the big tech guys, and return sovereignty to we the people. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that philosophy. Now let's see here. Now Lenny says if you pray to if you pray to God, you're put on a list. Look at the infiltration into the Catholic Church and even the Christian Church. Oh, for sure. I mean, now you go like Christian churches, they got like rainbow flags and like drag queen day. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on in this country. Absolutely. I see that happening. A bunch of wands. Thanks, Cope Dog. Yeah, so anyways, guys. Yeah, now Lenny says I picked strawberries and I picked cotton and I picked a lot of produce when I was younger. Hey man, I work construction and I hung out with all the Mexican dudes and we got into what do they call it? The jalapeno contest. Like when the carro de cucaracha or truca de cucaracha showed up, I would be the guy. They called me a Werexican because I would be eating those jalapenos, man, more than them. Now, the next day I suffered, obviously, when I got up in the morning, if you know what I mean. But I found that they were the hardest working, most God fearing people that I've ever met in my life. And so all the stereotypes that you hear from Democrats about them that, oh, we need them so they can pick our strawberries. Look, all of their kids, the guys that I work with, without exception, ended up becoming entrepreneurs, ended up starting their own small businesses, starting construction companies, landscaping companies, franchising, and they pursued the American dream. And in fact, most of them that I know vote Republican or Libertarian. They would never vote for a Democrat because they understand the concept of giving people a welfare check in exchange for votes. So it's it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough the stereotypes that the left has produced for Latinos because it's not the reality. These people want to have their own businesses and they want to be free just like you and me. The identity politics pushed by the far left have really put this country in a bad spot. Um, yeah, they were worse coming. Hey, that's for sure. What's the matter, you? Worse coming out than going in. But I did it, man, because I had to prove. Look, I was 16 years old. I'm dealing with guys that are like in their 20s and 30s. They've been in construction. Guys with hands that are built like bricks, right? And I grew up in construction because my dad was a builder. That's how I ended up in the construction industry. Um, And I had to prove myself to these guys because I was just a güero, you know. So by the time I got done, I still have calluses on my hands from working construction. Unbelievably. And I still do. Look, I can build a house from the ground up. Like I can dig the forms. I can put in the rebar. I can pour them. I can do the plumbing, the electrical, rough, finish, you name it. And I learned most of that stuff from Mexican dudes and old school white guys who were like Vietnam vets. So I take it as a personal insult when Democrats try and reduce Mexicans to being strawberry pickers, and we need illegal aliens to do jobs that white people won't do because white people will do the work. The problem is they've been brainwashed in the public school system into thinking that if you have a job in construction or you have a job as a plumber or an electrician or a builder, that somehow that's demeaning and that the only way that you can prove your value is to get some worthless degree in like transgender studies or African American studies or underwater basket weaving, right? And then those guys end up getting a job where? At Starbucks as a professional barista. And then they become professional protesters for the Democrat Party when they realize they've got to pay back this outrageous student loan that earned them a worthless degree. And they vote for politicians who promise to forgive that loan. It's a total scam, guys. If you really want what's best for your kids, you'll homeschool your children and teach them to get a job in the trades, in my opinion. Now, I became a lawyer, as most of you guys know, for a different reason, but with a background in construction. My goal is to help my son start his own construction company or maybe even a professional repair company so he can understand the joy of hard work. Because as a man, going out and working for a living is the most rewarding thing that you could ever do. Most of my friends are blue collar guys for a reason. I don't get along with academics, even though I am one, because I still have held on to my blue collar value system. So I hope you guys appreciate that about me. Um, Construction's awesome, man. The smell of the dust, the smell of the metal being welded, all that stuff is just amazing. So, guys, with that being said, I would like to go and catch the last part of my son's judo class, but I wanted to share this with you because I'm not going to be able to go live today. But just in closing, always carry, always be armed, and always be ready to protect your family. And always carry a couple of mags ready to go. And always make sure that your kids take judo and jujitsu, especially if they're boys. Yeah, and they even got rid of trade schools. What a joke, right? So God bless you guys. I really appreciate you guys staying loyal to my channel. I know I haven't been going live as much as I should, but again, I am a practicing attorney and I do my best to bring these shows to you. I appreciate any donations. This is a donations driven channel. So super chats, buying blocks of memberships to get more people to come and join Team MPE is always appreciated. Um, and one love, I love the smell of fresh cut cedar. Me too, Lenny. Absolutely. Yeah, going out and hustling in the streets is rewarding. That's right. I wouldn't trade my memories for anything. Well, I'm going to put that on the screen. So, this, guys, this is why I really appreciate What's the Matter You, because he's a legit regular guy, but he's intellectual enough to where he knows what's going on in the world. And that statement right there is why he's one of my moderators who has full administrative control over my channel. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this bad chicken out. Um, Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do